Good evening. My name is John Bohenko. I'm the city administrator for Saco. I'd like to welcome you all here to the I-95 Ocean Park Study, public information session. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to do some introductions. I just want to let you know that we do have the mayor and city council here with us, and we'll have a council meeting immediately following this public information session. I'd also like to introduce the panel tonight. To my left is Travis Moore, Interim Public Works Director, Emily Cole Prescott, our Planning Director, Matt Drost from the DOT, and Don Etchinger from Royal Palmer Engineering Company. So what I'd like to do is hand the program over to Travis in just a moment. I just want to say that after the full presentation, everybody will have an opportunity to get up and ask questions or get some feedback if you want some. We'll have some roving microphones so that we'll get you on, because this is being recorded. So those that couldn't make it tonight can watch it, and it'd be great to hear so that they can hear your comments or questions. So we'll be doing that. What I'd like to do now is just hand it over to Travis Moore, our Interim Public Works Director. Travis?
So I just wanted to give a little bit of background to kind of how this study happened. The intersection of Exit 2A was identified as a high crash location by the Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation System, also known as PACS. And that triggered a traffic study that was performed by VHB back in 2020. And then this audited the intersection of the Exit 2A, Route 1, as well as the I-195 ramps and the I-195 Ocean Park Road. And then Old Orchard Beach reached out for Saco to partner with them as well as Maine DOT on the feasibility study in 2022. So that study kicked off in September of 22. There were some initial comments in April of 23. Traffic analysis was performed in October of 23. There were cost evaluations that were put together in the summer of 2024. There was a draft report that was released in September of 2024. And then there was a client meeting on October 7th of 2024. This was presented at the Old Orchard Beach Council meeting on November 19th, and the final report was released on November 27th of 2024. And I'll hand it off to Emily.
Thanks, Travis. So we just compiled what we've heard so far, and we appreciate the emails that have been sent in. So later when we ask for public comment, these are some of the things, just a synopsis of some of the things that we've heard. Certainly doesn't capture everything. What we're going to be doing is we'll take all your emails, all of the comments that you've submitted, and we'll make sure that those get captured and reflected accordingly. But we just want to summarize some of the things that we've seen so far. There was discussion certainly at the January 13th City Council presentation where Goral Palmer presented to the City Council. There was a comment about roundabout design, eliminating or possibly reducing some carbon emissions, and to look at that. There was some interest from members of the public in learning more details about this study, so hopefully we can give you some of that this evening. There was concern about noise from I-195 needing to be addressed. There was a question about attending the meeting and having someone attend on their behalf. So if you're in the room, you'll have an opportunity to share the person's comments that you're attending on behalf of. There were comments about Exit 2A considerations. There were comments about business considerations and some additional need for public outreach. So we heard that. We're here tonight to talk with you folks. And then certainly safety considerations throughout the corridor. And like I said, this is only a brief summary. We know we have more emails we received. We received some even today, so we'll make sure that those get circulated and certainly copies sent to the counselors. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Don Etchinger from Goral Palmer. He's going to go through the presentation and some study details for you.
Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Don Etchinger. You guys can hear me okay? Thumbs up in the back. Great. So here tonight, we're going to go through a presentation. We'll take questions and responses after we're through the presentation. For folks that were at the the Saco Council meeting in January. The slides here will be very similar, but it's more for public content. So first, want to introduce our study team. So this is a planning partnership initiative. For folks that aren't familiar with that is, it's a transportation study focused on transportation improvements. It's funded both at a state and local level. This project is somewhat unique because it's funded by 3 parties, 2 local parties. So our direct point of contact on this project was the town of Old Orchard Beach, but there was also funding with the City of Saco and Maine Department of Transportation. This slide here provides our contacts that we had for each of those client members. In terms of the consultant team, Goro Palmer was the prime consultant on this project, but we were not alone. We had some sub-consultants helping us out. We had North Star Planning that assisted with some land use planning and some transit accommodations. James Tassi Consulting, Jim Tassi is pretty well known in the state for his bike and ped accommodations. And Aceto Landscape Architects. They helped us out with landscaping, lighting, but also some of the renderings that you'll see in tonight's presentation. So for this project, we actually had 2 study limits. On the graphic here, on the where the red dot is, that is Main Street, Saco, Route 1, near the interchange with Interstate 195. We'll get into some details here, but we'll isolate it to 2 high crash locations in that area. The second location is at the end of the spur, so where my cursor just moved to now. That's the end of the 195 spur, transitions into more of an urban corridor. So it starts at the end of the spur and continues into Old Orchard Beach to the halfway intersection. This is the intersection by the 7-Eleven convenience store. Very confusing intersection, also a high crash location. This slide here talks a little bit about what is our scope of the study. What are the things that we're looking for from a transportation perspective? So one is traffic operations. How well does the traffic operate through the corridor today, and can it be improved? We look at corridor safety. We look for high crash locations, which we'll talk about tonight. Speeds were a big issue, particularly coming off the end of the spur into Old Orchard Beach, so we were looking to provide some speed mitigation with this study. And then improving confusing geometry. So we have a variety of things that we had to deal with, particularly on the, I'll call it the end of spur corridor. So folks that travel through the halfway intersection by the 7-Eleven probably know that it's quite confusing. It's a little mini roundabout, but it's very confusing. It's been a high crash location for years. But it's just not, that's not the only issue that we found through that corridor. There's also a major weave that happens, particularly for campers coming off the spur that are turning into the Old Orchard Beach campground on the right before you get to Smith Wheel intersection, and traffic coming down Saco on Ocean Park Road that are maybe weaving to turn left at Smith Wheel Road intersection where the Dunkin' Donuts is. So there was a major weave happening there in a very short distance, also causing crashes and safety concerns. So this study was looking to address some of those. Access management, that is driveway openings, reviewing those and trying to improve on those for safety for not only the vehicles, but also bicycles or pedestrians that are using that same corridor. Pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, as well as gateway opportunities entering both communities. Travis spoke to the slide a little bit, so I'm not going to go into great length here, but this slide provides a summary of our schedule. So this project, the study has been ongoing for better part of 2 years. We had a kickoff meeting in the fall of 2022. We spent the bulk of 2023 into 2024 looking at traffic operations and safety improvements, and then presented those in early 2024. From there, we had a series of options to consider, which we'll talk about tonight. We compared those options. We came up with cost estimates and recommendations in the summer of last year, and presented our draft report and recommendations last fall. After presenting it to Old Orchard Beach Council and the draft report in November, we wrapped up this report late November of last year. I would say over the course of the 2 years, I think this will be our 24th meeting that we've had on this project. 5 have been public or council related, and the rest have been study team meetings that have involved all 3 clients, Town of Old Orchard, Saco, and Maine DOT. So jumping into some of the details of what we looked at, we started with the high crash locations. So this graphic here is similar to the study area graphic. I-195 runs left and right on the screen. Main Street, Route 1 in Saco is right here. The Hannaford is there. So both off-ramps in the eastbound direction of the spur, those off-ramps tying into Route 1, are high crash locations. So let's talk about the definition, what defines a high crash location. So it's 8 or more crashes in a 3-year period and an intersection or roadway section that has a critical rate factor of greater than 1.0. What is that? It's a mathematical calculation that Maine DOT goes through, compares the types and severity of the accidents at this location and compares them to accidents across the state. So in order to be classified by Maine DOT as a high crash location, you need 8 or more crashes in a 3-year period and a CRF greater than 1. Both off-ramps, exit 2A and 2B, in the eastbound direction where they merge with Route 1 are high crash locations. Traveling down into Old Orchard Beach, the halfway intersection that we mentioned earlier is also a high crash location, which I'm sure folks are not too surprised with. I think we have some diagrams of each of those. So this intersection here, this is our kind of a crash diagram. So the study period that we looked at was when we started our study. So the trailing 3 years was year 2019 through 2021. So kind of during the COVID years. And so this is the exit 2A off-ramp where my cursor is. Across from it is Ocean Park Road. Where my cursor is now is Route 1 heading in the northbound direction. And Route 1 in the southbound direction. Hannaford is over where my cursor is now, and the VIP is on the opposite side. So this intersection over the 3-year period from 2019 through 2021 had 52 crashes and a critical rate factor of 1.52. If you look at the crash patterns, you'll see that a lot of the crashes are reflective of the through traffic coming off the off-ramp from exit 2A onto Ocean Park Road. That movement happens at the same time as traffic coming up Ocean Park Road turning left. So that they're concurrent movements. The folks coming up Ocean Park Road are supposed to yield to the traffic coming on the off-ramp. Unfortunately, there are a lot of accidents with that maneuver. The next intersection is the second off-ramp on Route 1 in Saco. This is the northbound off-ramp heading towards Funtown, Splashtown, coming from the Turnpike. It has 19 crashes in that same 3-year period and a critical rate factor of 4.26. A lot of these accidents are contributed to lack of sight lines, high speeds, failure to yield to traffic on Route 1. This is the third crash diagram. This is down in the town of Old Orchard Beach at the halfway intersection. To give folks their bearing, the 7-Eleven is over here. Ocean Park Road is on the opposite side, and then we have Old Orchard Road, we have Saco Ave, and we have Temple Ave. So this intersection here has 27 crashes and a critical rate factor of 4.18. So all 3 intersections qualify by Maine DOT as a high crash location. So all 3 intersections were part of this study to look at mitigation measures to improve those. As Travis had mentioned in his opening slides, we actually didn't realize until we started the study, but there was a prior safety audit done for the 2 off-ramps in Saco back in 2020, done by VHB, another consulting firm, where they looked at those high crash locations. They were identified as high crash locations. So they did a safety audit and came up with their own recommendations. We've carried those recommendations forward into this study. And the recommendations include closing the through movement closing the through movement of exit 2A off-ramp that currently accesses Ocean Park Road, to close that off and not allow that movement to happen. Instead, to send the traffic down 195 to the far end of Ocean Park Road, which currently you can't turn right into, nor can you turn left out of onto the spur, so it doesn't have full access today, but to work in those improvements so that we can provide full access on the eastern end of Ocean Park Road in Saco, to provide full access there. In doing so, it allows the ability for us to close that southbound, the the exit ramp at 2A, the through movement. So that is the recommendations that were in that report that were presented to us, and we were asked to kind of carry that forward into this study. So the next few slides, I'd like to kind of present the recommendations that we went through this planning study, and present some graphics to share with you what was comprised of the report. We'll talk about concepts, we'll talk about costs, evaluation matrix, and our final recommendations. So this first slide here, Main Street in Saco, Route 1, is up and down on the page. The exit 2A off-ramp is located where my cursor is now. So right now, they allow for both a right turn movement and a through movement, the right turn onto Route 1 South heading towards Hannaford, and then the through movement onto Ocean Park Road. As part of our recommendations, we're proposing to eliminate that through movement. That will eliminate the conflict between that traffic coming off the off-ramp and the traffic on Ocean Park Road trying to turn left. So it should improve the safety and the operations of that signalized intersection. In addition to that, the other off-ramp here, this is the northbound off-ramp, exit 2B. That takes you up towards Funtown, Splashdown. We're looking to make geometric improvements at that intersection to better control speeds. So we're making the corner tying in a little more abrupt, and we're providing improvements to sight lines. We're providing clearing in that area, so the sight lines will be improved as you come off that off-ramp, and geometry will force you to slow down before you merge in with Route 1 traffic. The remainder of the slides will talk about Interstate 195 as it transitions from an interstate to a more of an urban street in Old Orchard Beach. So folks that drive the spur, as you're coming down, it tapers from 2 lanes to 1 lane before it merges in with the urban environment and merges in with Ocean Park Road from Saco. We have found and basically input from the public and from the town officials that speeds are still a problem, even though it tapers from 2 lanes to 1 lane. They're finding that traffic is not slowing down coming into this urban area. So a few recommendations are being made in this study. The first one is to move that merge from 2 lanes to 1 lane further back, further to the west by about 1,000 feet. So we're going to taper traffic. Basically, once they go over the interstate, the interstate goes over Main Street, Route 1, and now you have a long downhill slope. We're going to taper them from 2 lanes to 1 about 1,000 feet sooner than it does today. It will be about 3 football fields in length. And then we're going to introduce a roadway chicane is the technical term, but basically some horizontal geometry to force vehicles to slow down before they approach that first intersection. This roadway chicane would be incorporated with any of the options that we studied for the first intersection. The first intersection is the intersection coming off the spur. And so we actually looked at 3 different options coming off the spur. Today you have an unsignalized intersection and it's not full access. So there's some right turns and left turns are prohibited there. We looked at an unsignalized intersection with full access, so all movements would be provided. We looked at a signalized intersection there, and we looked at a roundabout. So we'll go into the evaluation matrix of each of those, but the graphic presented here shows the roundabout option at the end of the spur. Here's an existing photo of that area looking from the spur towards Old Orchard Beach. That was before, and that is a rendering of what it could look like as a roundabout coming into Old Orchard Beach. We're going to continue down the corridor heading eastward. This next graphic here provides the roundabout graphic was over here on the left. We're coming into town. This is Old Orchard Campground down here. Their current driveway entrance is located about right here. This is Dunkin' Donuts. This is Smith Wheel Road intersection. So there's a lot going on in this corridor. Currently, the Smith Wheel Road intersection is unsignalized. During the summertime, it's pretty challenging to get in and out of there because of the volume of traffic. And I had mentioned that the campground entrance was somewhat challenging too because it's very close to the end of the spur. And so campers coming off the spur have to shift 1 or 2 lanes to get access to that campground. So a couple of things are being proposed here. One is we're proposing to signalize the Smith Wheel Road intersection. So that will improve the operations during the summertime for the side roads. The second thing we're proposing to do is to relocate that campground entrance opposite Dunkin' Donuts down here. We're going to relocate it to be opposite the Smith Wheel. So we'll create a four-way signalized intersection there. Provides more distance for that weave I had mentioned coming off the spur for traffic to get into their right lanes. The signal will provide better access in and out of Smith Wheel and the residents in that area. In terms of bike and ped accommodations, 5-foot shoulders are proposed through this corridor for bicycle accommodations. Proposing sidewalks on both sides. We'll provide grass esplanades between the roadway and the sidewalks as long as we have right-of-way space available. We are also showing a paved multi-use trail from the campground entrance. This would be a 10-foot wide pedestrian multi-use trail from the campground entrance back into Saco, tying into the shoulder of Ocean Park Road. So this is an existing condition. This is looking eastbound, coming off the spur. Smith Wheel is on our left-hand side. Dunkin' Donuts is in this grass area right here. This would be an after rendering of what it could look like. A signalized intersection with full access. We'd have a new campground entrance on the right. I will note that this graphic is showing a dedicated right turn lane into the campground. We had since evaluated that and believe we do not need a dedicated right turn lane in the campground. So that we're going to pull that out. And this lane will become a through right lane in the future scenario. All right, this is our third intersection. This is the halfway intersection where the 7-Eleven is located. So this intersection here, we actually had done a prior study, a planning partnership study with just the town of Old Orchard Beach 3 or 4 or 5 years ago that just looked at this intersection because it was a high crash location. We analyzed 5 or 6 different options. We narrowed it down to either a roundabout or a signalized intersection. So we carried those recommendations forward into this study. The conclusion of that study was that we really needed to look at the whole corridor, not just that intersection. So that's why this second study came about. And so the recommendations out of this study is to signalize that intersection. So we feel we'll have slightly less property impacts, and we feel the operations of the corridor will be better where they're back-to-back signals with Smithville Road. So this is an existing photo of that intersection looking eastbound towards the 7-Eleven. And this would be an after scenario, signalized with full access. We'd have shoulders for bikes, we'd have sidewalks, crosswalks, center medians landscaped and the like. All right, I'm going to jump back. We're going to talk briefly about Dewey Ave. This is a local street near that halfway intersection. Dewey Ave is actually located right here. I'll go back a couple of slides to share. This is Dewey Ave located here. It's a dead-end street. It services, I think, about 8 residential properties. And with the proposal at this intersection, you'll see we're proposing a center median there. So we're restricting left turn access in and out of that dead-end street. So working with town officials, it was important that this study looked at some alternatives to that, to access there, potentially provide secondary access because we are restricting it with the intersection work. So we looked at 4 different options of how to provide better connectivity to Dewey Ave. And this was one of the 4 that we came up with, where basically you'll see in gray here, we're providing some secondary access through some of the other streets, Jeanette Ave, looks like Oak Street. So basically we can provide a local street connection here so that people can access Dewey Ave from other streets, just not from Ocean Park Road. All right, this slide here, so we developed some concepts and then we put some quantities and costs to those concepts. So we've got three graphics and costs here to share. On the left-hand side here, this would be the cost for the end of the spur up to the halfway intersection. So these costs here, I'll present it in total project costs. So it's not only construction costs, but it's engineering, inspection, and right-of-way costs. So that roadway segment from the end of the spur, including the roundabout to the halfway intersection, is about $15 to $16 million. The graphic over here on the right, where my cursor is, this is the ramp improvements on Saco Main Street Route 1. for both exit 2A and 2B. The total project cost estimate on that one, including right-of-way, inspection, engineering, and construction, is $600,000. And then the bottom graphic is the Dewey Ave. It's the actual concept where we showed connecting the 3 local streets. And similarly, it's about $600,000 for those local street improvements.
Don, before you go on, I just want to mention to people, if they can't read the figures, we do have we have slides that are blown up a little bit more. If you want one, you just raise your hand. Also, it will be on the website as well, and you'll be able to see it a little bit better. We had to compress this, so sorry about the inconvenience.
So I had mentioned that as we were coming off the end of the spur, we actually looked at 3 different intersection types: a signal, unsignal, and a roundabout. So this was a qualitative graphic that we put together, kind of an evaluation matrix considering traffic operations, safety, how well we calm traffic, how well we're accommodating all modes of traffic, things like that. So the graphic on the right is kind of color-coded, so red, yellow, green, red not so good, yellow is average, green is good. And it's represented in the first column as option 1, which is the roundabout, option 2 is the signal, option 3 is unsignal, and option 4 is a no build. So if we don't do anything, how well does it score? So you'll see the far right column scores the poorest, a lot of red there, that's a do nothing approach. Option 3, unsignalized, came in last place of the new options. Options 1 and 2 scored pretty well. Together, we felt collectively as a team that the roundabout option would do the best job of slowing speed down and controlling speeds going into this corridor. So ultimately, that was the recommendation. The recommendation was supported by the state DOT traffic engineer as well, who's pretty familiar with the corridor. I think this might be my last slide, so just our final recommendations. We're recommending a roundabout at the end of the spur. We're recommending a signalized intersection at the Smith Wheel Road intersection, and we're recommending a signalized intersection at the halfway intersection. We're also recommending geometric improvements at the 2 off-ramps in Saco on Main Street. And then in the report, there's a whole page of additional comments, things like if it goes to a design phase, making sure we design certain movements for certain size turning vehicles. The state traffic engineer specifically asked on the roundabout design, when you're exiting Old Orchard Beach, could we have a dedicated lane separated from the roundabout by a median, so a kind of a secondary lane so that traffic doesn't actually have to engage with traffic in the roundabout. So there will be some modifications to the recommendations that were put in this report, but generally speaking, it was supported through the process. In terms of next steps, kind of where we are today is more information presenting, but if there's a desire and an interest, the next steps would be kind of partnering with both communities and DOT, looking at funding opportunities, and how best to proceed forward with the project. Probably the next phase would be a design phase, and then a construction phase. Design phase could take 2 to 3 years, depending on how funding looks, and construction, best guess is probably a couple of years of construction as well.
Thank you, Don. I just want to point out there that these studies take multiple years down the road from when the study is complete to what gets implemented on the ground, and there's going to be additional time for public comment and design phase. That we couldn't build something just on this study, would have to go through a whole, which most of you know, would have to go through a whole nother engineering design phase. With that, I'd like to hand it off to, thank you, Don. I'd like to hand it off to Maine DOT.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. Just a few quick slides here about the partnership study and how Maine DOT was involved and how we got here. The town of Old Orchard Beach and the city of Saco approached Maine DOT in 2021 into 2022 about conducting a feasibility study focused on safety, accessibility, and enhancing economic development. That project, as many of our village partnerships are for communities of your size, was funded with 50% state funds and 50% local funds as well. The town and the city also agreed that any future capital projects would include a local share of non-federal funds as well. The study process began with the agreement signed by the three parties in June of 2022, when that commitment for future funding was made as well. The project was concluded in the fall of 2024, and the final invoice has already been submitted to Maine DOT from Old Orchard Beach and has been completed. On November 15th of 2024, Maine DOT provided the town of Old Orchard Beach with a letter confirming Maine DOT's support for the recommendations in the report. Don mentioned that earlier. It included a sign-off from our state traffic engineer about the recommendations that were included. Outlined in that letter from Maine DOT, mostly along the lines of what Don and Emily just shared with you, are the next steps. They'd be initiated with either resolutions from each community or a joint resolution from both communities supporting the recommendations in the study that were meant to go forward into the engineering phase. The resolution should acknowledge that the next phases of the project would require local funding. It's anticipated to be 10% of all future project costs, and obviously with a whole project of this magnitude, Maine DOT would work with the communities to draft that resolution for all future funding and project needs. Maine DOT would also work with the municipalities to seek the funding, and what I was going to say a moment ago is that are anticipated to be federal funds. With a project of this size, obviously we'd need some federal support for this type of project to design and construct the recommendations agreed to by all the parties. Goral Palmer estimates design costs would be somewhere around $1.3 million or so, which is calculated as 10% of the anticipated construction costs for this project. And both communities should be aligned on which improvements would be designed and constructed, and that local funding is available before advancing this project for federal or state transportation funding.
All set? So what I want to just make note of is that this is still in the study phase. This matter was presented to the City Council about a month ago, and out of that discussion came the request for this input session. It's important to understand the City Council has not signed on to any resolution yet. It's still evaluating its options. So tonight, it's important for us to understand and the City Council to understand what concerns you have. So when I open it up, I just ask you to just give your name and your address. And we're going to have some microphones roving around. And so please use those so other people at home can hear what your question is or your comment. So do we have you just raise your hand and this gentleman right here in the green. And right here, and then the next gentleman in the blue back there. So.
Good evening. My name is Andy Nightingale, 24 King Street here in Saco. So a couple quick questions I have. One, I see we're looking for some local funding for this, which I understand completely. Would Saco only be responsible for the parts that happen in Saco, and would Old Orchard Beach be responsible for the parts that happen in Old Orchard Beach, or is it a split between us?
At this time, I think I turn that over to DOT. If you have something, Don, that would explain that, or to Matt, to Don. Do you have any information relative to that? Typically, what it would happen would be within each community where the improvements are taking place would come up with that match. But I just wanted to have maybe Don talk to that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'm the best person to answer. The only comment I can give you is during the planning study, this planning study, I don't believe it was a 50-50 match between the town of Old Orchard and the city of Saco, but I can't speak to that directly. So, and the breakdown of costs moving forward, I think that would be part of the discussions that both communities need to engage in.
Right, yeah, and
I don't think we have the answer.
Yeah, that's something we'll still be discussing going forward. I think that's a major item that the City Council wants to have information on, and I'll get that clarified for them before they take any action.
Perfect, thank you. And my other question was, living on King Street, as many people know, down by Thornton Academy, my concern is any extra traffic that does get put on Route 1 South through Fast Food Alley and turning left onto King Street because they're trying to get to Ocean Park rather than going through a roundabout, 2 traffic lights, and this kind of stuff. So I just wondering if there's been any studies on the increase in traffic and people, because the intersection of King Street and Route 1 is relatively dangerous as well. A lot of pedestrians, a lot of students walk there. So I was just wondering if there's any consideration in your studies that took that into account. Thank you.
So as part of our study, that was not considered. I think if it moves forward into a design phase, I think that that's something that probably should be looked at. The intent is that the traffic that typically would be using Ocean Park Road would stay on the spur. Our expectations, they would stay on the spur and get off at the end of the spur and come back up on Ocean Park. That was the intent. If there's local concern with that, I think there could be a follow-up study early in the design phase to understand where do we think traffic is going to go and where they're going to, if they're diverting, where are they diverting to?
Yes, hi. I'm Dave Pelton. I live at 1 Dewey Avenue in Old Orchard Beach, the big blue house right there on the road. So a couple of questions. When you say you're restricting access to Dewey Avenue, does that mean it won't be accessible at all, or just it's only one way coming out?
The restrictions would be left turn restrictions. So you'd have the ability to turn right in and right out, but there'll be a center median in the middle of Ocean Park Road to prevent you from either turning left into it or turning left out of it to go into Old Orchard. So knowing that, we really wanted to provide Jeanette Ave connection and the other Oak Street connection so that you have access to get to your neighborhood.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm totally in favor of this whole concept, because what does not show up, so living right there, I not only see the actual accidents, but I hear a lot of the near accidents. And so this is a good step in the right direction, I think, for those of us that live in that area. We've been calling it Dysfunction Junction for quite a while. Suicide Circle, there's a good one. So, yeah, and the crosswalk is great too. I've tried to walk over to the restaurants and over to Jimmy the Greek's, and kind of take your life in your hands right now when you try and cross that road. So my other question though is about the floodplain area and sort of how this development might affect the, so where my particular house, when I first bought it a few years ago, was in a floodplain, but now it isn't. And I'm sort of hopeful that none of this work will somehow make the federal government think it is again a floodplain and the considerations there.
Yeah, so what I would say is there is a stream crossing, a brook crossing near Dewey Ave. So our footprint doesn't change in that area. We're not widening or impacting that area. What I will tell you is as we go up Dewey Ave and it dead ends, there is a drainage ravine in that area, and there will be wetland impacts to extend that local street connection. So they would have to go through the permitting process there, but we wouldn't anticipate it would affect the floodplain.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sandy Gay, 52 Cumberland Ave. The Smith wheel signals, are those going to be triggered by cars that are parked there, or is that going to be timed so that there'll be a red light there from time to time?
Yeah, so all the modern signals will be actuated, so there'll be video detection. So they'll be triggered by cars. They won't be on a timer that just circles through. So that will be good, particularly in the off season. So that was a lot of comments when we went through this study was really traffic is a problem for 4 months out of the year along that corridor, and the other 8 months it's not a problem. So the timing can be adjusted in terms of it will trigger when vehicles are present is what it will do.
So I think that's a great idea in the off-season. I'm one of these people that are now going to have to come down, use the roundabout to get back up to my house off Ocean Park Road. So, and when the traffic's really bad there in the summer, it's going to be a lot of cars, a lot of campers, a lot of trucks, a lot of vehicles going through there. And they're still got, the roundabout will slow it down some, but there's, drivers are as they are, and So if the Smith wheel signal would stop from time to time, that would at least alleviate some of that, so you would know that there would be a time when there would be calmer traffic to be able to get around that intersection. So that's the only reason I was asking.
Yeah, so the idea of the signal at Smith Wheel is you'll be able to turn left. You may have to wait for the green light at the signal, but you'll get that, whether it's peak summertime or even in the off-season.
Right, I'm talking about coming the other way. So I'm going to have to come down the spur to get back up Ocean Park Road to get to Cumberland Ave to get to my house.
Oh,
So
I'm
I'm
sorry.
concerned about traffic moving quickly into the roundabout when it's a lot of traffic
Yep.
coming in both directions.
So you're coming down the spur to turn right onto Ocean Park Road in Saco.
Correct.
Yeah, so you're going to have a right turn movement. You will have a yield on entry into the roundabout. You'll only be yielding to traffic that's turning left, that's coming up from Old Orchard Beach, that's turning left currently to Ocean Park Road. That's the only conflicting traffic you're going to have. You're not going to need to travel all the way through the roundabout, but you will have to take a 90-degree corner. The one quarter of the roundabout you'll need to navigate
Okay, so
through.
that's kind of how it is now, except that'll be opened up for a right turn.
Exactly. So there's no right turn right now.
Right.
So there's a left coming out of Old Orchard onto Ocean Park Road, but there's no right coming off the spur. We will produce, the roundabout will provide a right, as well as a left coming off of Ocean Park Road. So if you're down in that area and you want to get, instead of going up to Main Street on Route 1 to get to that interchange, you can go down and connect at the roundabout, yield on entry, go through, and then you can head up north on the, or
Thank you.
west.
That answers that. I have one other question. So this is going to be a while until this happens, and I'm concerned about the federal funding, about whether or not we're going to get that or not. But so for now, as a temporary thing, I come down that spur almost every day, get off 295, cross over, and go straight down Ocean Park Road. Is there any way, there's enough room there, and people who know about it automatically do this, make 2 lanes there, one dedicated straight lane, one dedicated right lane? I think, at least temporarily, that would alleviate a lot of the incidents there, because it's people coming up who don't know if people are going to go straight or turn right. People will go fast. It looks like they're going straight, and then they just turn right. So for at least a temporary fix, if there could be lined, straight arrow, right arrow, separated partway down, and I think there's enough space to do that. I'm offering that as a suggestion.
Anybody else? Anybody else have any comments? Yes, sir.
Neil Schuster, Ferry Road, former planning board and a member in Saco as well. I just want to compliment everybody on all the work. I mean, everybody here lives through this all the time, and I think you've come up with, being a traffic engineer and trying to figure this out in this environment, I think you've come up with a great potential solution. I like the idea of the traffic circle. I'm surprised Smithfield Road is not a high-crash location with the amount of traffic and the craziness that goes on there. But I'd just like to compliment everybody for the work that's been done, and thank you for this opportunity.
Anybody else have any comments or concerns? Yes, sir.
Hi, Paul Drinan with the Bicycle Coalition. Just a quick question. Well, first a comment. Thank you all for doing great work to make this community safer. It's obviously a definite need. Regarding some of the areas you described with a 5-foot shoulder and then also some areas with a 10-foot multimodal path, has there been any consideration or thought to just moving the curb line to create an off-road, what we call an off-road facility? Just want to throw that out there for consideration. Thanks.
Are you with the Bike Coalition of Maine? Did I hear that right?
I am. I'm the new Jim.
Okay, very good. So Jim Tassi was on our team specific for that reason. So we did look at multiple methods for accommodating bicyclists on this corridor, and we did consider an off alignment. But at the end of the day, considering all the options, Jim agreed that we thought this was our best way of accommodating the bicycles in this corridor. I will note, as part of the study also, we took a look. The Eastern Trail runs up just north of Route 1. So we saw that as a potential opportunity for bike ped connection as well. Part of the reason why we had that little multi-use trail from the campground up to Ocean Park Road in Saco is hopefully maybe sometime down the road, there's an opportunity to extend that trail all the way up to Route 1, Main Street, and maybe across Main Street to tie directly into the Eastern Trail. The campers that are there during the summer, of course, they like to go to the beach, but getting access to Eastern Trail for biking families would be awesome. So, but we couldn't pull that off in this study. Hopefully it'll be part of something future.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment or any concerns that you have? Yes, sir.
Hi, hi, Bob Hamblin, 347 Ferry Road. Been here in town for about 23 years. I'm a former city planner for the City of Saco, about 18 years. As my former planning board chairman, Neil, suggested, great job. Glad to see that this, both corridors, Ocean Park Road and Main Street in Saco, are getting the attention each is needed for a decade or, a decade or two now. Don, thanks for bringing up the Eastern Trail. What was it, a couple of weeks ago? And staff would know better, John or Emily. We heard from a gentleman from, I think it was GP Cog and or PAX, and told us about the work that's getting underway to take a look at the Route 1 corridor, or a significant part of it. My ears perked up because of the attention and the praise that he gave to the Eastern Trail. I couldn't agree with it more. I volunteered with the Eastern Trail Alliance for about 23 years, saw the trail built here in Saco, have seen it built essentially from South Portland down to Kittery. And our friend from GP Cog just praised it up and down. Couldn't agree more. It's sounding like a missed opportunity to me for this project, given the couple of project locations that you've shown me, for there not to be more emphasis on a connection to the Eastern Trail. Bicycles and walkers. I live down Ferry Road, and I use Ocean Park Road to get home. I use Old Orchard Beach Road. I come through the halfway intersection, not daily, but multiple times a week. In summer in particular, when there are seasonal employees down at the beach, and I think any who lived out that way or commute through that way recognize a lot of foot traffic, people on bicycles as well. I would urge the city, and I would urge MDOT to do whatever you can to improve conditions for bicycles and pedestrians down there. It's a gateway to Old Orchard Beach. I mean, I can't imagine that Old Orchard Beach is not similarly putting some kind of emphasis on improving conditions for bike and ped. And with the access to the Eastern Trail, no brainer, in my opinion. I got through about the first 20 or so pages of the report, meaning I've only got a few hundred pages to go. Just a couple of questions here, and I appreciate your hearing me out. On page 12, demonstration projects regarding traffic calming and pedestrian safety had been recommended by an earlier study, never implemented. I don't know if that was the city's or town's role to move forward with, or MDOT's. Be it as it may, they have not been implemented. How about the temporary measures, Don?
Yeah,
Are we going to see those?
Great question, Bob. So what I'll tell you is I think you might see them this summer. So we, a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, we collaborated with the City of Saco, Town of Old Orchard, and Maine DOT on some demonstration projects. What that is putting in temporary striping, maybe some flexible delineator posts to change the traffic patterns to try to make it safer for all users. Maybe put those in near crosswalks or at crosswalks, maybe tighten up some intersection radiuses with low-cost implementation measures and try it out for the summer, for the season. Won't hold up well with snow plows, so you try it out before you invest real money into expensive infrastructure improvements. Do it on a temporary basis using these lower cost items. So we actually, Jim Tassi was part of our team, and he actually does this for other communities throughout the state. So he actually did a demonstration project for this study area. And we were leveraging Maine DOT. I don't want to put Maine DOT in a bad light. It was before Matt was part of this, on this team, but the goal was, I think they were going to provide the materials, and the communities were going to install them with their public works teams. Maine DOT ran into some struggles securing those materials. So the whole season went by and they were never able to secure those materials. So what I will tell you, Bob, is in DOT's letter of recommendation as an outcome of this report, I think DOT acknowledges that demonstration project and said, I think they're interested in engaging in that in 2025.
Terrific, glad to hear, thank you. You're probably limited graphics-wise to what we've already seen as far as slides go, but I wondered if you might have a better a visual showing more of the shared use pathway that is being talked about, the 10-foot wide path.
Yeah, we have the top-down view, but I don't have a street view rendering of it. I can describe it. It would basically be separated from the roadway with curbing, a 5-foot grass space that will have landscaping and maybe street trees and pedestrian scale lighting. And then the pathway would be paved. It would be 10 feet wide. It accommodates bicycles, pedestrians, strollers, people taking all their stuff to the beach. So it's a wide space that's for basically non-motorized vehicles.
And basically stretch from the Old Orchard Beach Campground new entrance, let me see, north along the spur for how long?
Up to where it merges in with Ocean Park Road and Saco. So where it won't actually go up to the roundabout. Let's see if we can get this graphic. All right, so this graphic here, you'll see this is the intersection where we're proposing the multi-use path coming back towards Saco. And then it continues along the old road alignment all the way here to where it ties into Ocean Park Road. Ocean Park Road has 8-foot paved shoulders. We're kind of dropping it into that. There could be a future opportunity to continue that pathway all the way up to Main Street Route 1 if there was a desire. And that can connect you to the Eastern Trail. In the opposite direction, our study recommendations include, as land gets redeveloped heading eastbound towards Old Orchard downtown, that this multi-use path, as these parcels get redeveloped, that there's enough setback to allow that multi-use path to continue in that eastbound direction as well. So people that are from the campground trying to get towards the beach, they have that 10-foot wide trail.
Thank you, Don. Last point. From a civilian perspective, it seems like the Ocean Park Road right-of-way is more than your, minimum 50 feet wide, and I have no idea. And then let me see, the spur, MDOT property?
Yes.
And once again, I'm not sure of the width of that right-of-way.
Very wide. The entire footprint of the roundabout fits well inside the available right-of-way that's owned by the state of Maine.
I've come to recognize over time that occasionally these generational opportunities come along. And for this project to not do everything it can to improve bicycle and pedestrian opportunities, I think would be a wasted opportunity. Love everything I've seen up here. Long needed improvements. It's going to be great for motorists. I'm a motorist. I walk, I bike, and would love to see greater thought given to what else might be possible. And I know when we get down to the list and pedestrian connectivity, bike ped accommodations are mentioned, bump it up the list a few spots and put a little more priority. I challenge you, MDOT. Go for it.
Thank you, Bob. Is there any other comments or concerns? Yes.
Thank you again, Sandy Gay. Thank you, Bob. That was, just made me think of all kinds of things while you were talking. But at the end of Ocean Park Road where it meets Route 1, is there going to be can there be a crosswalk installed there to take you over to the trail right now? Because I do bike up that way. So the only really safe way to do it is to go to the crosswalk across from the gas station in Hannaford, but then there's no crosswalk across the driveway into Hannaford and cars are turning. So it would be really convenient to have a sidewalk or crosswalk up there.
I think it's a great comment. The current concept does not show a crosswalk there, but I think it's worth investigating and doing. I think if we can eliminate, one of the challenges with that intersection is it's trying to accommodate so much traffic that there isn't a lot of opportunity for pedestrian crossings, but the Eastern Trails is right across Route 1 at that location. It's a prime spot for it. It's my hope that if we can eliminate that through movement traffic, we can make the intersection more efficient from a vehicle standpoint and create more green time to create a crosswalk there. Our focus was to address the crashes as it relates to the vehicles, but I think it's a great comment.
Is there anybody else? Well, I want to take this up. Oh, Your Honor, Mayor. Here, you want to, oh, there you go. You get the,
Good evening, Jody McPhail, 9 Willow Ave. I am the mayor of Saco. And first off, thank you for the panel for all being here and residents for expressing all of your concerns, opinions via email, being here tonight. So I do have a couple of questions that were given to me by residents who were not able to attend. One of the first ones is first responder time. Traditionally, our fire, especially this fire, what route do they take? Do they go Industrial Park Road to I-95 and down?
the chief is here, so I could have, can we get a microphone for him?
Sorry, your question one more time.
First responder times, if we shut down 2A cross-traffic to Ocean Park Road and the other neighboring communities, streets, is your normal route for that area Industrial Park Road down the ramp, or do you come down North Street, take Maine?
The majority of the time, we do take Industrial Park Road and then come down the ramp. But I mean, obviously, we can, come from North Street to Main Street. We're probably saving, maybe less than a minute. But right now, we typically will take Industrial Park Road and go down Ocean Park.
So that would need to be addressed if you had to go all the way down Ocean Park, take the rotary, coming back up, or have access for the first responders, of course, to cross maybe. Okay. Second is, was the option of resignaling the light at 2A looked at? And if not, why? And if it was not approved, why was the reasoning of looking at the resignaling?
So I can't speak to the VHB study as to whether they looked at resignalizing it. We did not look at retiming that intersection. We were given guidance that there was a prior study done. Those are the recommendations of that prior study, and they had asked us to carry those recommendations forward. So, so we didn't spend time analyzing the intersection from a traffic operations and modeling perspective. If that is a concern of the community, I think that is something that could be done early in the next phase of this project.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so if the council were, if 2A is not changed to a cut across through, as it is currently, would the roundabout be needed? There are multiple issues creating the roundabout that
Yes.
it would take care of? And
Yes. The roundabout would be recommended regardless of what you're doing at 2A.
Okay, great, thank you. And the final one for me, as far as my city council and some of our questions that were posed at the meeting that night, is in reading the resolution to join forces with Old Orchard in this, it is written that we are doing the acceptance of the feasibility study, basically the final draft. If we are to sign that resolution, are we bound to the plan in place, or are there other options that we can still discuss, such as resignaling 2A? So I guess the main question for the council is, what are we accepting by signing that resolution?
Well, again, I think we'll be talking about it internally as well. But I think it is something that you'd have to look at the entire project to determine if one piece of it that you call out, and that would be the council's decision, in the, if you were to pass this resolution, you may want to call that piece out as an issue, so that going forward, as the study progresses, and because the study goes into design, that would come up. And it would be something I think we'd have to work on directly with DOT and see what, if there is so much importance placed to that they cannot move off of it, or it would be an ability to make that change. Because as Don has said, the roundabout is probably one of the most important parts of this. If we made the change at that intersection, I would assume that would not stop the whole project. So we will, when we talk about it as a city council, that issue can be brought up, and as part of our resolution or as a letter, as part of it, the record, we could say that the city council's in favor of this, and this is an area that we're not, that we would like to have looked at and changed, something like that. So yes, I think it's important, though, that at some point the city council makes its decision and then puts that resolution together to send off for, let's say 80% of support for the project. So that will be important, and we'll talk about that. We have some notes here that we've taken, and we will put together correspondence to make sure that that all the appropriate people know what the thoughts of the public were here tonight, so that their comments and concerns can be entered into record as probably an appendix. So we'll do that as well. Yes, Councilor. Hold on, Councilor.
I'm Tricia Hewitt, Main Street, Saco, Ward 6 City Councilor. My question is, seeing the traffic pattern study was done during October, will there be another study during peak season of July and August because the number of vehicles and the size will vary?
Yeah, so if you see traffic data was collected off-season, they're always adjusted to the calendar year. So Maine DOT is very scriptive of what they want us to analyze. So we would actually have adjustment factors by month. So if it was collected in January, we make a certain adjustment factor to factor in more of the peak summertime. So that is all documented in the report, in the 200-300 pages. It's in the back. So we do that, as well as we project future years. So a lot of this analysis is projected on annual growth, traffic growth factors over the next, say, 20 years. So it's just not present day and based on a certain time of year that the data was collected.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, again, I want to thank everybody that took time out of their schedule tonight to come out and make your comments known and concerns. We really appreciate it as a panel that you've taken this interest. So thank you very much. I guess it'll be about 5 minutes, Mayor, before we can get the council meeting going. So again, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.